agenda that we post on the shared drive in advance, but I knew that people probably wouldn't have their computers today, so I got printed copies. So again, we do have a quorum. We have 3 of the 5 members. I have notes from the one member that won't be joining, and hopefully Todd will join us here momentarily, but I want to be sensitive to the supervisors' times because we do have them scheduled at specific times. So I'll call the meeting to order and I'll look for approval of the agenda unless there's any discussion. Is there a motion to approve or discussion on the agenda?
I move to approve both the agenda and the minutes.
Okay.
I'll second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. The agenda and minutes are approved. So first order of business is to hear from Supervisor AJ Stone. AJ, are you on the line with us?
I am. You guys hear me okay?
You can hear you fine. It's all you. We'd like to understand what it is you've heard from citizens, what your concerns are, and what you're looking for. So go ahead.
Well, okay. I have heard from citizens in the western portion of the county that are really worried about these turbines getting too close. They're seeing what happened out in Deer Creek, and they're scared. They're nervous. So that's why I brought the temporary moratorium out in order to try to get some reasonable setbacks so that stuff like this doesn't happen in the future. And since then, I have gotten numerous calls getting thanks for doing that and looking out for some people. And I've also had conversations with people who have signed up and believe that we should have some setbacks as well. So my thought and theory, which has always been since day one, is there's got to be some common ground, some reasonability to make it where we can work together with wind turbines. We can coexist in this county. So.
And just for the record, we do have Todd has joined us now. So we have 4 of the 5 commissioners present. Have you heard anything about the what folks think about the work towards an ordinance? I know there's been a lot of talk around different parts of the county about the zoning commission work that has started.
Yeah, I guess I've heard some people that said that they would like to be represent their area or their township if countywide zoning was to go ahead. But what I'm hearing is obviously still mixed emotions on countywide zoning as a whole versus just a standalone ordinance for wind and solar. So I guess I haven't really heard any complaints about what the zoning commission is doing. I've just heard that people are a little leery just because they're not, there's no representation in their area, which understandably is fine because there's no zoning in their area. But so no, I've the people just, and it's just been a handful of people that have said anything to me, and I've told them if it makes the next step, then the county as a whole will get involved. So as far as I'm concerned, what you guys are doing is the proper way of looking into it and bring a recommendation to the board that is, I believe, just you guys are taking the proper steps in my mind.
Do you have any personal thoughts one way or the other as to whether or not whatever commercial wind ordinance language might be developed, whether you think that should be in a zoning ordinance that would then have to be determined, does it stay within the 3 townships or does it get expanded, or whether it should be pursued as a standalone wind ordinance independent of zoning?
I guess zoning doesn't bother or scare me or bother me either way. I live in town, so I've dealt with zoning my whole life. But to me, I guess if there is gonna be some repercussion or people not wanting countywide zoning, I kind of think that a standalone ordinance is probably the best bet. Basically, it's if that's all we're looking at right now, is wind and solar being an issue, then there needs to be an ordinance. I wouldn't necessarily say that there has to be countywide zoning, but if it comes to that for the protection of the citizens, I would then recommend countywide zoning. But I honestly think we can probably do it with the standalone ordinance, countywide, and not countywide zoning or not a zoning ordinance.
So, in other words, a wind ordinance is a separate issue from zoning.
Correct.
Okay.
I think one or the other has to be done. And I guess whatever the best way or most protection for the citizens is what I guess I would go either way. As long as we're able to protect the citizens that do not want these things on top of them.
Sure.
And that would look out for the rest of the county that doesn't have any turbines in it yet.
Right. Yeah, because the reality is if we had zoning countywide 10 years ago, the things that happened in Deer Creek likely would not have happened because every single one of those sites would have had to have gotten a conditional use permit from the Board of Adjustment.
Correct. Yep, correct. And that wouldn't have been put within 1,000 feet of people's houses. I agree.
Okay.
Has there been any, with the worthwhile wind ordinance or the worthwhile project, have Board of Supervisors approved anything with that at the moment? Because I know the only thing that's been approved for the Board of Adjustments was their weather tower
Correct.
for the zoned,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
There's been nothing as far as,
Yeah, to my knowledge, and AJ, correct me if this is wrong, there's been no permits applied for other than the Met Tower a couple of years ago.
yep,
Nor has there been any agreements that have been signed
Okay.
with regard to worthwhile wind.
Okay.
Invenergy has been pressing for that. But I think, the action that the supervisors took a month ago with the resolution of the moratorium.
Yeah, correct. We have
So,
not.
Puts on record with Invenergy that they're not.
and when does that moratorium end?
It is July 1st, 2022. But it can go anytime before that if we come to an agreement on a development agreement or ordinance or whatever. But yeah, it does sunset July 1st, 2022.
Can it be extended?
We would have to go in and amend that resolution at the time or sometime
Okay.
shortly before that. It could be, but I don't want it to. I want to see an agreement. I want to see things done right and just get back and get the motion going again. I think we can get through it.
Okay.
Dana, Todd, you got any questions for AJ?
You had mentioned something about the zoning regulations. What would be the pushback that you would see from the citizens from going countywide zoning?
Evidently, there's been pushback over the years because it's never been done. There's been paperwork we've seen drawn up from the 80s, 2000s, and evidently there's enough resistance out there that the prior boards have not done it. So I don't know. I don't think everybody understands zoning. What they see it as is another layer of government to tell them what they can and can't do, and that's not true.
Right.
As you guys know that. So I think it's a lot more education for a lot of the rural people that would realize that zoning isn't gonna even really affect them. It's gonna protect them from things that shouldn't be out there where they don't belong. Whether that be a garbage burning facility, wind turbines, whatever you want. You can right now you can go build whatever you want anywhere in the county and pretty much get away with it. And that's not protecting the citizens of the rural areas. So I think zoning would be a good thing, but I just don't know how much more resistance we would get from the citizens about it.
Thank you.
Todd?
Nothing.
No? Any last comments you want to make certain that we're aware of, AJ? We've got, Mark should be joining here in just a couple of minutes. He's not yet. No, he is just now joining, so.
No, I think you guys are doing a great job. You're doing a thorough job of it. So whatever recommendations you bring to us, we will take wholeheartedly and understanding what you guys think is the right thing to do as well. So I appreciate what you guys are doing. I know it's a volunteer thing and it's kind of a lot of work right now, but so thanks for what you're doing. And we'll definitely take whatever recommendations you bring I'll take them personal and very serious. So.
Sure. Okay, thanks, AJ.
All right. Thank you guys. Have a good night.
Yep, bye.
Bye.
Mark, are you with us yet?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you now.
Okay.
Okay, so it's all you for the next 15 minutes. We just want to understand what you're hearing from the folks in the county, what your concerns are, what things that you want to make certain we're considering, so.
I guess, the only concerns I'm hearing is from the people that really don't understand what's going on here. They're concerned. They want to see this project move ahead. Most of them are the landowners that I've heard from, I guess, that I believe have either signed prospective leases or whatever you want to call them, I guess, or they're very interested in doing either wind or solar on their property. And they're very concerned about what's going on.
Yeah. Are they specific in their concerns? Pretty broad statement. Are there any specific things that they're sharing with you?
I guess they're pretty much concerned about their property rights. They feel that they should be able to work out the agreements and work with their neighbors and make this thing work, I think, is their big concern, instead of being told what they can do or can't do, I believe is their concerns.
If landowners have some of these potential contracts signed with the wind energy, doesn't that block the solar people from coming in for now?
They have both. I
Or is
mean,
it
certain
totally
people have
irrelevant?
just solar sign and certain people have just wind sign, from what I understand, the ones I've talked to. Some are eligible for the solar. I think it depends on where they're at in accordance with the power lines. I don't think there's any solar and wind on the same farm that I have heard.
Anything else that you're hearing with regard to concerns or considerations?
No,
Things that, or people that you're hearing from want to make certain that we're considering besides what you've described so far?
that pretty much hits it. Like I say, most of the ones I've personally heard from, other than through the petitions or those kind of things, the ones I normally hear from are the people that are eligible or have already been talking to the companies, and they're just concerned. They want to see this project be moving ahead. They don't want to see it stalled out. They're not very happy with what's going on in that direction. They feel they should be able to, you know, they're on that myth, you know, they don't like zoning, they don't like anything else other than their right to do what they need to do on their property for their own good and their family's goods.
Have any of them raised any concerns with what's included in the agreements at this point? As far as
I-
setbacks or decibel levels or any of that other thing, those other things?
I really don't know how many of them paid attention to them. I mean, I guess I had not been on any of your meetings until what Jeff gave me the other day. What I see you've worked on so far is probably somewhat acceptable. I mean, from what I see, what you're working on, nobody's really said specifically what they think is right or wrong, I guess. Again, I'm only mainly hearing from the people that have already, as far as I know, they've signed some kind of agreement with Invenergy for either wind or solar. So those are the ones I hear from directly, the ones that directly talk to me.
Have they expressed any opinions on some of the things that had happened in Deer Creek?
There again, you're talking two totally different sides of the county, totally opposite,
I understand that, but I think that the information about things that happened in Deer Creek where people were told one thing and then Invenergy did something different, or the developer that they sold the project to did something different.
Correct.
The folks that are in the west part of the county are certainly, a lot of them, I would think would be aware of that. Do they have any opinions on those kinds of things and whether those kinds of things are okay or, yeah,
I've heard from one or two gentlemen, I think that I'm pretty sure the one is signed in, like, whatever you want to call it, an agreement.
something needs to be looked at or,
Yeah, the one gentleman I've talked to is just concerned that, whatever they said in an agreement, he wants to make sure they're held accountable for that. And I somewhat believe that as a landowner myself, that's been involved in a wind project 21 years ago. I've lived in it for 21 years. And I know we did a lot of homework before my parents signed any easements or any agreements with the wind turbine company. They actually hired their attorney. They made sure everything was written in that contract that they wanted in that contract. And I don't know if that's what has not been happening with these new companies like Invenergy. I don't know. We didn't deal with Invenergy. We dealt with a private individual at the time that started the project over here. So as far as I know, everything worked out good over here. I don't know what happened in Deer Creek. There was either miscommunication between Invenergy and Excel when Excel bought them out. That's their bad, I guess. It's not right, but most people I think are concerned. They want to be good neighbors, but they also don't want to be controlled.
are there things in the, you mentioned your folks signed an agreement. Did they include things in there about their neighbors?
We made sure, and in all fairness, at the time this farm was built, I don't know of anybody that took turbines at that time that wasn't still living, in their house. Some of them were retired when they took them. They're no longer here now. They've sold that property. But when this farm was built, I would say, I would imagine at least 99% of the people actually lived in the home and I think there's some turbines over here as close as 900 feet from the property, which would have been more than likely the homeowner or the landowner at the time too. So I don't remember any specific setbacks from a neighbor because like I say, everybody that took turbines here that I can think of actually lived on their own place at the time. I realize that's different today. It's the opposite. There's probably less than 50% of the people that actually live on the property. Or live on an acreage and own the property anymore. It's gotten to be a lot of people that don't actually own the property and they don't understand, our thoughts on what our property is too. So.
Would you prefer the ordinance to be part of the zoning or separate, and what's your thoughts on countywide zoning?
I'm not a countywide zoning fan, and I guess if I wanted zoning, I'd move to town. That's kind of my opinion there, and good portion of the people I deal with the same way. They really don't want that, and I would use that term lightly, the layer of government that they don't want to have to deal with, and that includes not only farmers, but people that own personal property over here that just own an acreage. If it's going to be, I would probably prefer it to see it's a standalone as an ordinance. I think either way could have, I guess if you want to say it would have teeth. I mean, and if you're going to do this, I think that's what your end goal is here to make, probably hold some people accountable that either aren't or, so I probably prefer it standalone.
Todd, you got any questions for Mark?
I know that's unusual, no.
Dana?
I think that's it.
Okay. All right. Any other thing you want to make certain that we're aware of, Mark?
No, I think, my concerns and, I mean, hopefully it sounds like you guys are doing your hard work and that's good. It's like you say, I know it's a thankless job. You're not being paid and you're not going to make everybody happy. That's how it goes. No, just take into consideration people's property rights. That's the biggest thing I hear is they're concerned about their property rights. And that goes both ways. I understand that the people that own just an acreage don't want the turbine near. But it also goes the other way that, there's a lot of landowners here that do pay a large portion of the property taxes in Worth County, and you need to consider that also. So that's about all I have.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you guys. Have a good night.
You
Bye.
too.
All right. We got a couple of minutes yet. Another 5 minutes before Enos is scheduled to join. He just pulled up outside. Oh, okay.
Hey Jeff,
Tell him
just
to
so I
come
have
on.
my attendance right, who's all sitting over there, guys? Just so I have my.
Oh, I'm
attendance
sorry.
right.
So, yeah, so present in here, me, David Quisley, Todd Rotho, and Dana.
Okay, I just saw somebody sitting behind you guys. I didn't know if I should list those guys as maybe.
No, there's some observers, and Mark Tomlinson's running the OWL.
I'm the assistant IT tonight.
Yeah, yeah.
Assistant.
Enos, you can join us over here. We just drop Mark off.
Joel goes on a
We
worldwide
just dropped
adventure
Mark
and leaves me to
off of the
tend to the
call,
county.
so.
Lucky. Mark, what's your last name one more time?
Tomlinson, Tomlins.
Perfect. Thank you, guys.
It's a nice warm seat there for you, Enos.
It's all warmed up, huh? It's not hot, it's just warm.
Let's see if it gets hot.
Okay,
if it gets hot.
if it's okay with you, we're gonna get you started 5 minutes early,
That's fine.
and we'll still hold you to the 15 minutes that the other supervisors had. They didn't take all of it, but So again, we wanted to have an opportunity to hear from you, understand what it is you're hearing in the way of concerns from, what folk, what your concerns are, what things you want to make certain that we consider. It's your time at the microphone.
Gotcha. Most of the calls that I have received even before it became now would you like me to tell you what I think also at the same time?
Absolutely. Yep,
You bet.
yep.
I know that Invenergy has come out in the road agreement plan with a 1,500 foot because at the Kensett meeting, I don't know how many of you were there, you weren't there, in their presentation, they had, which I have a copy of right here.
2,000 feet, didn't they?
Yes, for Worthwhile Wind Farm, they had a setback of 2,000 feet from a residence.
Yeah, you're talking the meeting about a year and a half ago?
I'm talking about the one in June of 18.
Yeah, I was there.
Okay, you were there.
Yep.
And then in the Freeborn one, they also said minimum residential setback of 2,000 feet, but they were going to use 1,500 feet. And they also had in there other ones like top of Iowa 2, where there's 399 feet total height with a 1,240 foot setback. I've come to the conclusion that they want a 1,500, but the problem we run into is we got different height towers. And if you're gonna make this thing work down the road, as these towers get bigger, you need to move the setback back to get the right decibels. Also, if somebody comes in and says, we got too many residential homes, and I don't know if they'll ever do this or not, we'd rather go with the smaller towers, like down in Bristol, Brookfield, Danville, and not have that kind of setback. It would kill those programs down there to have a 1,500 foot setback if you're gonna have smaller towers. Because then you can put them close to people's houses because of the decibels. That's the number one complaint. The second complaint that I hear the most of is shadow flicker. And and they have technology to completely eliminate it. So,
Didn't know that.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah, we can talk about that.
Okay, interesting.
it's, yeah, he could,
Yeah, we'll
But
talk
anyway,
about it.
yeah.
anyway,
So,
anyway,
we can-
they have technology to completely eliminate it. So when it comes to the non-participating landowners, my attitude is it should be eliminated. When it comes to the participating landowners, most of your ordinances out there will say a maximum of 30 hours per year or 30 minutes a day until that's reached.
Yeah, well, we're talking about him having one, his parents having,
Who's on?
for the next project? Yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, he just stated that he hasn't worked with them on a contract.
Can you mute, please?
There you go.
Get him?
Got it.
All right, height restrictions. We've heard anything from, when I was up and I talked to XL, they are at right now, their windmills are at 56 feet total. I've heard the ones down here are anywhere from 590 to over 600 feet. So I think there ought to be a total I think there ought to be a set maximum for how tall these are that we want to go. The closest ones, they said possibly Silver Lake, Heartland area were the St. Ansgar ones. They didn't even match up with Deer Creek. And if you've ever been out in Deer Creek, you know how tall those are right now. So I think there ought to be something there. The other things that those are the shadow flicker and the tower setback with the decibels are the two biggest ones. Other things that I'd like to see in there is, this is another one that they did bring up to me. How far are they going to set back from a non-participating landowner? They said, I think Mark said the other day that he was going to be 110% of the blade length.
Is that a property line?
From the property line. Is that what I said?
No, you didn't. You said non-participating landowner.
Line.
Specify
How far that thing is, as supervisor, are commissioning of the towers or abandonment of the towers. I've heard three different things. I even had one land agent tell me that all they had to get from the bank was a letter of credit. The latest one that I've seen in the contract that they're putting out right now, it's a 15-year deal. But I think that the county should have something in there to protect them. Yes, it is between the landowner and the wind company. There's just no two ways about it. Hopefully the county will never have to get involved. We'll never have a problem. But I think we should have something to fall if we do run into that situation.
An estimate of decommissioning from a third party, and then an escrow account or a surety bond that's posted. So I think there's some language that we can use to address those kinds of things.
Another thing, as far as the supervisor went, and I've talked to Mark about these, and he's also put them in there. I mentioned them to him the last time. A lot of them have 110% of the total height away from the right of way. They put it in the contract as 110% of the total height away from the middle of the road. I don't quite agree with that. I think it should, if it drops down, I don't think it should come into our ditches or our roads.
Yeah, right.
I think it should stay back.
Field.
What's that?
Right away goes clear out into the field.
Well, yeah, right of way is right along the edge of the ditch. So I'm not kosher on that one with them. Other than that, things that I've thought of is there's our drainage ditches, how far we set back from those. Drainage tile, how far you set back from those. I feel that the more things that you get in a contract, both sides know more what's going on. Then there isn't these questions out there. Cemetery setback, total number that you want in the county, total number that you want in each project in a township. Big concern of mine is, considering I'm from out there, and we got eagle nests in Silver Lake. And for the first time ever, after my lifetime and my parents' lifetime, and I would imagine my grandparents, I got an eagle sitting in my tree the first week in January, and I couldn't believe it.
Right.
I was too, I only had one of them. So you saw them way over to your place.
Yeah, there's a parrot that's, I wonder if there's not a nest happening in my woods somewhere, but
Oh,
I
It
haven't
would
found
already
it.
be there. They've already got babies.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, has anybody been out there?
Yeah.
Look, I haven't.
I'd be interested in where, because I've been scouting. I've found two in the county, and DNR has an active program where they're looking for people to report eagle nests.
So.
But yeah,
And
I just hate to see after all these years of not seeing eagles, to have eagles come in and then we drive them off. So, but I also realize that the DNR would like to see a 5-mile setback from an eagle nest. And I am just a little over 5 miles from the eagle nest up at Silver Lake, so I see where they're coming from. But you start doing stuff like that and you won't have any windmills at all. And I'm not against windmills, guys. For the landowners out there that want the windmills, and as long as they stay back from non-participating homeowners, I got no problem with it. I do have a problem with them, and I've already discussed that with the land agents, about the acreage owners. They get nothing to say about it, and I am totally against that. I think that they should have a right to say, no, we want it set back from our house also the same amount of distance and all works, which would happen if you do countywide zoning.
On that note, I mean, we've discussed, as a group, there's a lot of, well, not a lot, but there's a few different approaches that we could take. We could craft language and then put it in the zoning ordinance as a separate chapter. And then we have the next question then would be, does it stop there, or, which means it only applies to the three to extend zoning countywide, so that the wind language is applicable countywide as well. That would drive all zoning. Or would your preferred approach be a standalone wind ordinance, separate the issues? Zoning is one issue that can be taken up as a separate issue. Wind ordinance, here's an ordinance, it stands alone as a wind ordinance that is applied countywide. Separately, we can have a whole separate discussion on zoning.
A lot of people know where I stand on this because I live in a zone township.
Yep.
I don't think that 3 townships, just because they have the interstate running down them, should be zoned and 9 townships not. But I also know that this is a very hot topic in Worth County. And I would rather see a wind ordinance put as a standalone and not combined with the ordinance that's out there right now with those 3 townships. I'd like that thing to stand all by itself, a wind ordinance. And then later on, you can cross the bridge on whether you want to take and go from 3 townships to 12 townships on zoning.
Right.
Because I have read the zoning that they put in. Well, they put it in 1970 and then they updated it in 09 when the casino went in, and there's a lot of stuff in there's guys that it's not pertinent to people in the country. It's just, it should get rewrote. And I don't want to take the time to rewrite that while we're doing a wind ordinance. I think it should be a standalone wind ordinance only. So,
Okay,
but,
got about 2 minutes left. What do you want to make certain that we hear?
I like the fact that you guys are researching this thing. I want to get as much information as possible so we can do the best job on it that we possibly can. And let's face it, we don't need to recreate the wheel because there's ordinances out there in the state of Iowa and you can pick and choose. And you don't have to take everything that they take, but you just got to hit the high points so that we get it right the first time, you know. And you guys are going to come to us with a recommendation. We may go, no, we don't like it, or yes, we do. I mean, it's not on your shoulders. It's dumping back on the supervisors. It's the 3 supervisors that are going to carry this thing. But the thing that got me going the most on this thing is we have a Worth County Comprehensive Development Plan. And in there, it's got goals. There's all kinds of stuff in there. It's on the Worth County website. I don't know if you've read it or not, but it sets up goals and then it comes down to strategies. And I read this once before. Under industrial development, it says encourage and support the development and expansion of industry within the county that does not cause a nuisance or interfere with the existing quality of life for surrounding neighbors and property owners where safe and proper provisions can be made. I mean, it said it. I mean, this was done back in, I think, 2006. Yep. And there's 12 people on it. There's quite a few of them still alive. I know 4 or 5 of them personally, and they got together and they made this county development plan. And if it says it there, I don't know how we can ignore it and not do something about it. So, Any other questions you got for me?
I'm concerned about fire, safety and fire.
I have looked at I don't zoom in, but I have looked at all your videos and yeah, you brought that up. That was a good point.
Some towers have fire suppression, most don't. Cheaper towers because of the price, I suppose. And it's not so much that I'm worried about suppressing the fire on the tower as I am the effects of it. As a zoning committee, we're supposed to be concerned about safety and the people that are building the towers have like a 1,500 to 2,000 foot safety zone for like a 500-foot tower in case it comes down. There's the manufacturer of the towers say, hey, in the event we're losing a blade or there's a failure, anybody that's working on the tower has to get, you know, like 16 or 1,700 foot away. That's just for the safety recommended by the manufacturer. And to me, that feeds into our setbacks, or that's a big safety item. So I didn't know if you guys as supervisors have discussed fire and liability.
We have not discussed the fire. The first time I heard about it was last Wednesday night when you brought it up at that meeting. And
We're gonna have a cornfield forest fire somewhere sooner or later. Maybe not in this county, but it's gonna happen. We have 40, 50 mile an hour winds, you know. I mean, combines used to burn up and they're 20 foot off the ground. These things are throwing flames for hundreds of feet. These 2,000 feet safety zones.
Oh, I didn't mention, I do feel that if you have, like, for instance, if you have a setback of 2,000 feet with a certain decibel, I have no problem with variances. You want to go to that residential landowner and get a variance and move that thing 1,200 feet out his back door. He makes the call on that. I got no problem with that. I'm protecting the people that are all of our residents in the area. So.
Great, thank you, Enos.
Brought a lot of
Appreciate your time.
brought a lot of paperwork. I didn't know what you wanted to see and what you didn't want to see, so.
I did make a note. I'd like to get a copy, if I could, of that Invenergy handout that you said they had from Ken sent.
Oh,
If you can,
I can email that.
yeah, if you can email that to me, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah. You want a copy of this little puppy
Yeah.
right there?
Yes, yep. I'll add that to our file.
Thank you.
Great.
You bet.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Enos.
Enos.
Yeah. See you guys.
We look forward to giving you nice paperwork
The more research you guys do, the less we gotta do.
and your seat gets hotter.
There you go.
Okay, next on the agenda is begin our comment on proposed wind ordinance language. So I had shared with everybody on the shared drive a copy of a draft ordinance. It's got gobs of detail in it. As you've seen, a lot of it, a majority of it was copied from other counties. There's a lot of different ways that we can go through this. Ultimately, what we need to provide to the supervisors is not just our recommendation of we should have XYZ kind of ordinance, but the details. So I thought an efficient, expeditious way of us getting there is to start with a draft and we can go through it. And I think if we take the approach of, as you read this stuff, if there's something here that you think this is, it's not good for the county, it's not good for the citizens, let's address it. All of this stuff necessary? Yeah, that's a matter of opinion. I think somebody had said the other day, we could take the Kossuth County ordinance, do a automated word replacement search, Kossuth to Worth, and boom, we've got something. My response to that is, yep, that is an approach that we can take. If we take that approach, however, we're going to miss things that other counties have identified as important that Kossuth didn't include. And so what I tried to do by putting this together is extract all of those different things from the several counties that I looked at to put this together. And there's been some things that people have suggested to me in the meantime that I'll highlight when we get there as well.
Can I step back to
Yeah.
last week a little bit?
Sure.
Okay. I went into our zoning board or to the zoning document and did photocopy that
Mhm.
because I spent a lot of time reading that and there's two things on this page that I want to bring up to you guys. Okay, and it's with us as the zoning committee of making county ordinances. So it clearly is stating not just the zone township, but it clearly is county. So
Right.
going to the county ordinance is no problem whatsoever is what I'm
Okay.
getting out of this.
Yep.
Now, I had some other people mention to me, membership, you don't live in the zone township, and that's what it says here.
Right. And that's been brought up to AJ and the supervisors as well. In fact, when I was interim zoning administrator
Mhm.
last year, I brought it up to the board of supervisors
Okay,
during one of the board of supervisors meetings. And the response at that time, and that was when Ken was still with us.
okay,
But the response at that time and vocalized by Mark was, that's okay. We understand that. I've been on as you know, been on the
Yeah.
commission for years. He said, we've got a tough time getting folks to serve on these things. You're staying on it. AJ also looked at it more recently when it was raised to him. And he looked at Iowa law, and Iowa law says a majority of the members of the commission have to be in the county. So AJ has said, and it was brought up in the supervisors meetings here within the last 30 days as well. And they said, yep, we understand, but that's our zoning commission now.
and that's fine. I just wanted to make sure, because I had concerned citizens
Yep.
bring it up to me, and I'm like, are the supervisors aware of this? And-
Oh,
And
absolutely.
unless you peek into the zoned area,
Right.
I would say that is black and white.
Yep.
Okay, and that's all I was bringing up. Great. I'm wonderful with that. But if you're bored, well, I tell you what, so I'd kind of like to go back. And I don't want to do anything without Justin here, in respect for him.
Yeah.
But I think I'm just voicing an opinion now rather than, I think countywide zoning ordinance for wind energy only and solar, if you want to include that, but that is separate from the zoning is
Yeah.
what I'm hearing from the supervisors
I
tonight.
got that too.
Yeah, I would, the way you phrased that, you said wind zoning ordinance and solar. I would rephrase that and just drop the word zoning.
Well, yeah, wind ordinance.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
a standalone wind ordinance independent from zoning.
Right.
And that's been my opinion for a long time. I think that we just need to separate those issues.
Well, and that's what we're hearing from the supervisors
Yeah.
and that's why, I was real resistant until I spent some time this week and, and part of the thing is I'm bringing a little bit of a skewed view being on the Board of Adjustments, because that's all we deal with is the zoned area.
Right.
And I was thinking, okay, we're only dealing with the zoned area, but that's not what the document says. So, okay, I just wanted to get that out. So,
Well, it wasn't right with your guts. You got to go with your gut.
well, and then
There's nothing wrong with that.
the whole thing on this, and you know, to me, the highlights of your, you know, there's some inconsistencies in it.
Oh, I don't doubt that.
Where you've changed things, you know, like the one that's 50 decimals and 40 decimals and you know, you're pulling so much. My question is this too much? In order for it to be exclusionary?
Yeah,
And, you know, and what I'm also, you know, does everything, you know, like fire suppression, does it need to be part of this document? You know, I don't know the answer, but the one thing is we have time to discuss these because they're telling us it's.
well, we do and we don't.
Well,
So the moratorium sunsets next summer.
yes,
And so on the one hand, we could say, well, the moratorium's in place, so nothing's going to happen until the Board of Supervisors pass an ordinance or this thing sunsets, unless they were to extend it, which
right.
you heard AJ's thoughts on that. We have to take that concept with a bit of a grain of salt, though, because the resolution by code is just, it's an intent. It's a policy that's verbalized by the supervisors in the form of a resolution. It carries no regulatory weight. It doesn't stop or prevent Invenergy from applying for their permits to the Board of Adjustment.
Correct.
For the 3 townships,
Correct.
nor into the other 9 townships in the county they want.
Correct.
So if the objective is to get rules in place that Worthwhile Wind is supposed to abide by, a moratorium that is in place doesn't do that. The only thing that would do that would be an ordinance that would be passed by the Board of Supervisors in advance of Invenergy doing something, or much of these kinds of things put together in a road maintenance agreement, which is what Invenergy is asking to be done.
Right. Yes.
And so I think to say that we've got, you know, there's not a hurry on it, I would take issue with that and say, I think there is a hurry on it, because what we're hearing is right now, the only people that have any potential for any kind of rules around what Invenergy does is the people in the 3 townships who are going to have permits come into the Board of Adjustment. And then the Board of Adjustment could levy certain rules.
Correct.
But it's only in those 3 townships. The rest of the townships, it's Deer Creek, Wild West all over again.
Yeah, the only good thing is a good chunk of making the whole project work includes zone townships. That's the only caveat that's going to help slow that down a little bit. But and I think you kind of took me wrong. To just take Cassuth and hurry up and just put it in versus doing it right is what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
I want to take the time that we can put something in that one makes sense and 2 is legal in the
Right,
end.
yep.
Because you get into the whole exclusionary, you know, like that video. Did everybody watch that video? Or is it
I
just-
stopped by
Yep.
because I don't have your phone number and I gave it to Justin, but I doubt he's had time.
Yeah.
And then I sent that to you and,
You know, it was,
it was
but
a really good video.
Yeah.
I mean,
But, you know, and what I'm hearing from everybody is, you know, how much of this, you know, where do we need, you know, where can you write the document that's legally, you know, going to stand up in court and be a good document?
Right.
I mean, that's what
Well,
I'm
and-
concerned about.
Yeah, and
If you
that's,
put too much in there, is it exclusionary? And now
I know what you're
can't-
saying.
yeah,
Can you-
so a good example of exclusionary is what Madison County did.
yeah,
And it is clearly exclusionary but it's also clearly legal. It's an in-force ordinance. And that was one of my goals. Yeah, I had a lot of suggestions by a lot of people that, oh, take a look at this thing from New York and take a look at this from Michigan and look what Pennsylvania did. And I said, those are all very interesting, but I want to look at and rely on language for ordinances that are in place in Iowa.
Yeah.
And so that's why I tried to take those. Now, you know, they're clearly, you know, if this thing were in proper format, you know, it is probably 20 pages, which is a material amount. But one thing I want to point out is when we're looking at the ordinance, certainly beyond the size, because size shouldn't matter, it's content that should matter. But when we think about the wind ordinance, and I'll echo some of the things that Mark talked about today. You know, he's concerned about the ordinance tying people's hands, right? Landowners not being able to do what they want to do. Well, first of all, if we do a standalone wind ordinance, I mean, that's really more of a zoning comment than a wind ordinance. And if you look at the language that's in all of these different wind ordinances, this is all requirements that are put onto the energy company.
As it should be.
Yeah.
The only way it's really tying people's hands is if the people that want to build something are saying their property rights are worth more on their side of the fence than what their neighbors is on their side of the fence. That's really the only thing that's tying people's hands is getting.
Yeah, but I don't even think it ties people's hands, because even if we say whatever number we come up with regard to physical setback, if that physical setback, if the ordinance as it's written, it would say the setback's got to be X distance, the noise has to be X amount. Those can be waived for those landowners that want the turbine, the participating landowner. They can waive those noise limits, they can waive those setbacks. What they can't waive is the setback as it applies to their neighbor.
The non-participating.
The non-participating.
Correct.
And so if it's crafted that way,
That's what we're
I
worried
don't,
about.
yeah, I don't
That's what we're trying to come up with.
I don't think that a landowner, if they understand that, I really struggle to understand how they would believe that this is tying, something like this would tie their hands. Because it establishes rules, but those certain rules could be waived by them on their property.
Or the neighbors could waive it also.
The waiver.
If they are non-participating, you know,
That's the whole idea.
let's face it, if you own 40 acres and you got a 1,500-foot setback, it's a little hard to put a windmill on that without infringing on a neighbor,
Right.
right?
Unless they're already participating.
But I'm just saying, if your neighbors around you don't participate, you're not getting it unless you
Right.
move it to the one side and the other neighbor says, yeah, I'll go ahead and allow you,
Right.
or I will participate. But,
Right.
and that's the whole point is yeah, in that case, I can say, okay, that's exclusionary. For the guy with the 40 acres, he doesn't get it. But at the same point, he doesn't have enough land mass in which to allow it.
I
You
mean,
know,
realistically,
and he
I could
shouldn't.
put one on my 5 acres
Mhm.
if all my neighbors didn't care.
Yeah, exactly.
So it doesn't matter. I mean,
Yeah.
we're protecting the people. Every piece of land, whether it's your 3 acres, my 5 acres, your 5,000 acres, we should all have the same right to say yes or no. And
Correct.
that's where we're trying to protect, like the guy in the video said, to protect the guys that don't want it.
Right.
And they can still sign off, they can get compensated,
Right.
they can get paid. That's what the Board of Adjustments is for. You know, our job isn't to worry about the tax base. Our job isn't to worry about if he wants a windmill and if he's gonna make money on it. Our job is to protect everybody's own personal property.
Yeah. It's
Whether
the-
you want one or
It's the
not.
general welfare, the general welfare of the citizens and their private property rights
Yeah,
on both sides of the conversation.
especially when it comes to safety, because that's what,
Right.
safety and welfare, health, that's what
Right.
the zoning committee is.
Yeah.
We're not an economic tool. I mean,
Are the discussion during a supervisor meeting on height restrictions? I know individually supervisors have talked about total height restrictions. Maximum total number of turbines. Kossuth so
We're back.
because the reason I'm asking that was because I've thought about that all week. The taller they get, the harder it is to make it fair for everybody, as far as neighbors that might not want it.
Well,
And that's tough.
doesn't this go back to the very first, when we talked to Invent Energy of, you were asking for a formula? You know, I really don't care if you make them 10,000 feet tall,
Mhm.
but shouldn't your setback be
Right.
X times
Yeah.
the height
Yeah,
to get, you want to put up the turbine down the road from you?
Mhm.
It's not very, I don't even know how big that one is of Les's.
yeah, the turbine itself, I think, is 179 meters. I don't recall what the total height is with the blade.
But, like, do you ever notice any noise from that one at your place?
My place, no, but I'm half a mile away.
Exactly.
The guy that lives on the hill that's 800 feet away from it, he hears it. You can stand on his porch and hear it.
Yeah, that's Mammon's.
Yeah.
But
And
the
a
guy,
shadow flicker in his place. He sent me a video inside his house of the shadow flicker. Oh,
but he bought the house with the windmill already there.
yeah, but he
already there.
didn't, the windmill was there, but he didn't realize the flicker was going to be there.
No. But that's what I'm just
But
saying.
yeah.
I mean, you can, that's not a real big turbine.
Right.
And that's where I always get into. And I think what I'm hearing from the people I'm talking to, there's basically three things. It's setbacks. How far does it need to be? How loud is it? And what's the flicker?
But that's all relevant to the size of the tower. That's the problem.
And
Well,
that's where I was going with that.
Yeah.
That maybe your setback is a minimum on that, when we go to write this, is a minimum with a
See, and
times,
X
times
Well,
3 or
the-
times 5 or
The
whatever.
way that it's written right now, and again, we have to decide if we like it or not. But the way that it's written right now is there's the setback says it's X amount of feet, it's the greater of X amount of feet or X times the height.
Mhm.
And the formula is based on the 200 meter or 180 meter turbines with a 1,500 feet. And then it also it separates, and I think this is an important, was it. That's what people were talking about. They didn't like the noise, they didn't like the flicker, so to solve that, that doesn't necessarily,
Mhm.
because the setback might not address those other two things. And I also went so far as to say that with regard to noise and flicker, those limits, participating landowners should get zero flicker, should get zero noise. It is no more appropriate for Todd that wants to put up kinds of things. Can you put that on the shared drive for us?
I
Or
am working
give me
on
the
getting-
source and I'll
Yep,
post
honestly,
it out there?
there was some of it discussed in that video.
Oh, yeah, it was all discussed.
There was a
in
lot
that
of that
video.
discussed in that video, and there's.
I'm not sure what,
They played at a supervisors meeting. They had a zoning specialist.
Was not at a supervisor, well, it's at a Winnebago supervisors meeting,
Right.
and, but, no, it was not, it was not. It wasn't at a meeting, but a number of them, all of our supervisors were invited to attend, and Winnebago's were, and a number of them did attend, and Winnebago zoning board also was invited. And I can send that to anybody that would like it, it's online, yeah,
Right, there's the link. We can just put that link
I can send it to
in the
you.
public folder.
okay.
That would help me a lot.
Yeah, I can do that.
Are you
too.
Mrs. Combs?
I am.
Okay, hi, I'm
I
Todd.
introduced myself earlier. Sorry, I was gonna really shut up. I really was.
Yeah, you kind of do need to stay
Yeah.
quiet. I mean, sorry, but so,
Okay,
so yeah, but.
The manufacturers all have this information,
Mhm.
the tower manufacturers, the generator, for safety of the people putting up their product, for the erection crews. But, and too much
Right.
common sense involved to include
Right.
that in our distancing. So they don't want us to know about that. In my opinion, that's why they do it.
Yeah.
And, wow, that's a big deal. Because
Wow.
it says like for a 500-foot tower, I believe it was, if there's lightning, you gotta be 3/4 of a mile away in your car. Really? You wanna put that up 1,000 foot from my kid's bedroom window? Okay, that's how I look at some of this. Lightning's a real thing. Some people can say it's an act of nature. I say, yeah, it's an act of nature, but if you're gonna build a 500-foot metal tower, you just attracted it
Mhm.
to the guy driving underneath or driving by on the road, or I don't know, picking strawberries out of the ditch. I don't know.
Right.
I just think it's something that we need to consider. Along with our nuisance distances of
Right, right.
noise, flicker, sound.
Yep.
Safety.
Yep. So what parts of this wants to get talked about first?
Can I just ask one
Yeah,
quick question,
sure.
hopefully? When we talk about sound, total decibels for the overall project or total decibels per
Per turbine.
Is that how we want to approach that?
I think so.
Okay.
You know, each turbine, if we look at Deer Creek as an example, that project has got two different size, total height turbines out there. I know when they put up the top of Iowa 2, they had two different, turbines on top of their popsicle sticks. And we heard Mark Carl from Invenergy acknowledge that clustered turbines present a different sound level and sound pattern than single turbines.
Right.
So I think if what we say is that from a residence, that's where the sound is regulated, then it is by turbine, whether it's by itself or among a
It should,
group.
yeah, to me, it should be measured at our
At the
setback.
residency,
I don't think it should be
Well,
measured at
yeah.
the residence.
at property
I think
line.
it should be measured at setback. Okay, if we put a setback in, let's say 2,000-foot safety and then 110% of the windmill height. Whatever that measurement is, just an example.
Yeah,
To me, that's where the decibels should be read. We put in that distance for several reasons, for nuisance, noise pollution, whatever. And I don't care if that residence is 2 miles away or 10 foot outside of that linear footage we measure. To me, it should be measured at the established linear footage for that tower. That's where, to me, that's where the decibels should be read. Otherwise, what are we establishing the distance for other than how much of it we can see from 1,000 foot away? Okay, you got a safety distance, and I know the distance affects the noise, but there's a lot of things that affect the noise. Okay, and because of, maybe I got a walking path 100 foot from my house, but does that mean at my house it can only be 40 decibels and then the other corner of the property that I bought, it can be 50? To me, just preliminary talking, the decibels should be measured at the footage of setback for that tower. I don't know if I'm saying that so you can follow it. You could say property line, you could say
That's,
setback.
I mean, you could set your setback at the property line and therefore that takes care of that conversation.
Exactly, exactly.
well, and that's, yeah,
Because there's so many different things that affect, like you said, there's surround sound, there's amphitheater, there's humidity, barometric pressure, wind speed.
yeah. it all
There's so
affects it,
many things that affect.
But I just had a question. You got a lot of definitions here,
yep.
which, that's all part of it. Did I miss where the definition of flicker was?
I don't, probably not. I don't know that I
Well,
defined it.
because here's my question. When you say zero flicker, what is the definition of the flicker, of the fact of the sun is rising in Deer Creek,
Mhm.
and at a particular time, am I having a flicker for X minutes while that sun is going up from those Deer Creek towers if everything's aligned right? Now, I've never noticed it, but they're new too. But you know, where, at what point is it a flicker versus, you know, like a cloud going over? It's a shadow more than a flick, you know what I'm?
Yeah, is it all the same thing? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, so
Did I
I'll,
miss it?
no, that's exactly
During
right.
that
So,
timeframe?
exactly. And
Okay.
Invenergy has said this. They're on record as saying, you
Okay,
know, the time that the sun comes up every day is known.
Yes.
The specific azimuth that the sun comes up every day is known,
No.
because it
Yep.
moves each day, right? And the speed at which the sun traverses the heavens is known.
in other words, we can land on the moon.
They know where they know where the turbine is, they know where the blades are, they know that turbine, so that during the periods of time that it would cause a shadow flicker, the
Mhm.
blades aren't moving. It's not
Mhm.
operating.
Okay.
So
So
they can do that.
you're eliminating the flicker by not turning the blades at a particular time.
That's, yes,
Yeah.
that's one way of
And
doing it.
and, okay, so that's where my question is, at what point is that flicker a nuisance versus something, a shadow in the distance, you know?
To me, that's different for each individual. You either got a shadow and a flicker, you know.
Well, you know what I'm saying?
It doesn't
you know,
bother me, but it drives my old man crazy. Some people can't deal with it. I don't
Yeah,
know.
but I mean, okay, if, is it 1 mile that, you know,
I don't
my
think
house is 1.5 miles from the tower. At this
Yeah, I don't
particular
know,
time,
dude.
I'm lined up,
That's
so
a
you
good
gotta shut it
question.
off for me on that, and I couldn't care less about it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm?
Yeah, absolutely. How far away does
Yeah,
the
I mean,
flicker have?
Where does
I don't
flicker
think
stop?
I don't think it goes that far. I think it's either there or it's not there. And
And
So in other
I
words, what
agree,
you're
I
asking
mean,
is, does that have to come down to if an individual, do we got to have language in here that says if an individual complains of flicker, they've got to resolve it? I mean, is that kind of where you're going?
well, I'm just kind of wondering, I
so I
mean,
haven't created a definition yet, but this is the video that my neighbor sent me.
oh yeah,
That's shadow
Yeah, is
flicker.
that a mammoth?
yeah, I get that. And,
Yeah, and I've experienced it worse than that, but whatever, I mean.
well, and the thing is that's real.
Yeah,
I mean, okay, that one I can say, well, what happens if somebody, you know, you're just being difficult and you say, I have shadow flicker at my house. Well, if I'm standing there and the sun's just right, because the land is flat,
Yeah, I don't know.
you know, and I'm
That's
5
something to
miles
look up, I
away,
guess.
you know, to me, that we have to have the definition of
yeah.
where the,
Yep.
and I didn't see that. That's why.
Yeah, I'll look to see if somebody has, already has a shadow flicker definition in their ordinance.
Okay, good. That was, I mean, so I didn't want to derail this, sorry.
Nope, that's why we're here to look through this stuff, to find out what's wrong with it.
But
What don't we like? What do we think is injurious to the county?
this was the one thing, 50 decimals, and that says 40 there.
I think I'm getting old and need vocals. I can't on and off on it.
That's in the definition. Because as a whole, you know, you just copied and pasted. It's like it
Yep.
was, we wanted
Yeah.
50 and then you went to 40, so you changed it.
Yeah,
They don't match.
Yep, yep.
Okay, that was the one thing. So has anybody got any real problems with definitions? I'm just, we can zip through most of those, can't we?
and I do have my notes here that Justin had sent me.
Okay, is there anything we should get to him before he?
Well, the only thing Justin said, and he didn't address things in this draft specifically. He just said setbacks, minimum 1,500, possible up to 1,800. He wants to be cautious so we don't make it so large that we'll never have development like Madison County, 1.5 miles.
Right.
He said noise, he said 50 dBA seems reasonable, but could go to 45. Flicker, he thinks 30 hours is fine. And he says, I think the above needs to apply to all building structures, state and county parks and bodies of water. He talks about GPS on vehicles over 10,000 pounds that go off service road. Service roads should be limited to 80,000 pounds. And I think did I use the 10,000?
I think there were just the 80,000 in there when. Yep.
Tile lines that are damaged should be fixed immediately. Future maps for the life of the contract we're planning to have, but we're still fighting compaction, which is causing yield loss from phase 2. I'm assuming he's talking about top of Iowa phase 2.
Mhm. For that compact.
So is that something that ordinance should be silent on?
Well, that
That
well, that's up to the landowner
Right.
to be diligent. Now, the problem is that I'd say, hey, I want to put a GPS on if you're over 80,000 pounds, because it futuristic. I have a county tile that's crushed. That crane went there. I can point the finger.
Right.
Acting my farm, I signed on the dotted line.
Yeah, if you're non-participant.
They're
they
not
shouldn't
on
be
your
able-
land.
They shouldn't be able to come on your land.
Yeah.
And if they accidentally do, the GPS can prove it.
Yep.
Because like I had my talk with this dad, he's like, my dad, they got these haul routes. I'm like, do you know how many truckers I see a day go down the road? Whether they know it or not, or GPS or not.
Oh, exactly.
Put GPS track.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a pickup, can't be 10,000 pounds, really? My power stroke, I've rolled down the road to 60,000 pounds before in a single rear wheel pickup. Anything under 10,000 pounds, and we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. No.
So,
I
but
mean, yeah.
your point is that the soil compaction shouldn't really be part of the scope of a county ordinance. Because
I
it's,
think we need to figure out that line with what the landowner is responsible to read their contract and put in their contract with whoever the company is versus what we are suggesting is included in the ordinance.
right,
Yeah.
What may be
For the
just.
health, safety and welfare.
right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think to me, one of the things is with some exceptions, it's a matter of, is this solely impactful to the landowner? And is it something that the landowner should reasonably be aware of or concerned with? If the answer to those questions are yes, it's probably not really the scope of a county ordinance.
The problem comes back to, we have county tiles going through participant and non-participant land.
Right,
And that's where this gets gray.
right. And that's
Okay,
why I think,
Compaction is different than tile.
exactly.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
Right.
And that's where I want to have the trackability, because
exactly.
you go over the tile, you crush it,
You know,
I can prove that.
you know.
So you're paying for it, not me as a drain. Yeah.
Right.
You know, non-participant, I shouldn't have to pay to.
Soil compaction should not be in there. in the scope. But
I
we can-
I
we'll
guess
have
I
that
kind of agree with
conversation
you,
with-
but
with
we'll keep
Justin.
going
Yep,
with Justin here because we
Yeah.
aren't going to get, as far as I'm concerned, we really, you know,
It's
how
gonna
far are
take us
we
a
going
few
to?
meetings, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
yep, all right, so keep going.
Okay, let me caught up to you where you at here.
I just went to the section 1. Yeah. All I found was the 40 and the 50 decibel in the
Yeah.
definition. Other than that, I really had no problem with what Jeff put
I
together.
think I'm still.
It takes a while to get there.
Okay.
Now, the real question I had on, you know, and we're gonna argue about setbacks, and it's gonna take a little bit to figure it out. But one of the big questions I've got is if Innovergen Energy is saying 1,500 feet, right? Wrong or right, and then we're also talking about height versus, if you got, the bigger the turbine, to me, the
Right.
further the setback, but
Yep.
why is like Cassuth County and some of these others, the adjacent property line, why wouldn't that be 1,500 feet if you're a non-participant?
I'm not sure if I followed your question there.
Well, like
so-
here, we're seeing 600 or 110% of the total height.
Right, so I think, and this is just,
I'm just,
yeah, this is just what I've, you know, from reading these different things, some of the conclusions that I've came from, that I've come to on these things. I think what a lot of them tried to do with the property line setbacks, right-of-way setbacks and things of that nature is address fall zone. And I think fall zone, maybe just fall zone, and Dana, maybe this gets into, you know, related to your world. There's got to be some kind of a formula that they use to determine the fall zone of different kinds of things. A building's got a different fall zone than something else. I think that's what they tried to do, because I did see some ordinances that specified that term, fall zone of 1.1, 110% of the total height.
okay.
But, so anyway, I think that's how they came up with those distances. To your point, you know, somebody mentioned to me one time that, well, the setback shouldn't be from, I'm a non-participating landowner. The setback shouldn't be from my house. The setback should be from my property. Because someday I might want to build a house on the other side of my property.
Right, that's where my question on that is I've got a, you know, I am a perfect example. My house is here and I got a perfect 40 acres. It's a mile down the road that you could build a house on. The neighbor puts, and then right across the road, there's a perfect place to put a turbine that would hinder the future development of my land.
Absolutely. And
I
your land-
mean-
and your property values.
Yeah,
My answer to that is, just like Smitty had mentioned, a lot of landowners are going, hey, we want to be able to build what we want to on our land.
I agree.
Okay. My argument, not just to windmills, with all sorts of things that happen in the county is, if this is a fence, why do you have more rights than what do I do? Why is your land and what you want to do with it worth more than what my land and what I want to do with it is? And if you don't have the setback from a property line, this is very prejudiced, because if this guy wants the windmill and it's not a long ways back, from the property line instead of his house, this guy's viewpoint that it can't just be from somebody's house, or like some of these other places have said, it can't be just from uninhibited or seldomly used buildings. property line is the only clear distinction
Correct.
between two property owners, and and the rights of those owners happen at the property line.
So,
Not because your house is 100 foot in or your tower's 1,000 foot in.
right,
Your rights start and end at your property line,
well, that's,
not at your house, not
that,
where your future house is.
why does-
Property line.
so that was my question. That was the 175. It should,
Well,
What's
like I
the-
said, so
why-
I came up with a 3.75 because I said, well, if we assume 1,500 feet, and if we change 1,500 feet, then we need to change the formula. But I said 3.75 because I said, well, if 1,500 feet is okay for a 180 meter turbine, that's 3.75 times the height of that turbine gets us to 1,500 feet.
Yes.
So if the turbine grows, that 3.75 multiplier would increase that setback.
and if it gets,
And
and
if
if it
it's
gets
smaller-
smaller, 1,500 is the minimum.
Right,
And that's all rational, but we just picked a number out of the air.
yes, and that's what I said.
We had no reason to say 100 feet, a mile, 1,500 feet. We picked a number out of the air. We have to have reason for picking, okay, because we've got different variables, the flicker, the noise, the site, whatever.
Well-
My standard that I think makes sense for right now is that safety distance, okay? If the manufacturer, like I said, says 1,600 feet for their workers, that's just for objects falling down. That's just for fire going straight down. That has nothing to do with the wind, because these things can go for a mile. They can, but a safety distance set up by the manufacturer for their tower as our minimum buffer, and then add
what if
the
we,
ratio for height on top.
yeah, what if we said,
That's what I was wondering. It's like compounding interest. The
Right.
farther you go to add 100 foot of safety distance, it might add 300 foot.
right, so
Correct.
instead of 1,500 feet, the physical setback must be equal to the minimum of the manufacturer's.
Plus, because remember that minimum is like I said, it's not for high wind, it's not for electrical problems, it's just for mechanical failures and fires.
The only trouble with that kind of a language that says,
It can always be brought down to other committee.
the only reason I'm hesitant right now to jump on board with it, and I do like the way that it sounds, just to say the physical setback is based on the manufacturer's safety zone distance. I'd want to look and see what a variety of these manufacturer safety.
Almost making somebody else write your zoning ordinance by doing that.
Well, if you
And
want,
I
a
get
bigger
that.
tower, you know.
And I get that, but I'm not,
I like it to some extent because it takes the onus off of us to come up with a number.
It-
Whatever number we come up with,
There's
wrong.
another way to fix
it's not going to be
that.
the right number.
There's another way to fix that, and that's why I brought up, do we want a height cap on the mills in this county?
Right.
Okay, and that's killing several birds with one stone here. Because the bigger they are, the more bitching you're gonna get from people, because it's gonna look huge, even if you got 1,000 foot tower and you're a quarter mile away, it looks like a 500 foot tower on your doorstep. okay? And it's harder to regulate. And I'm not saying that I want to tell somebody how big they can or can't build, but with the safety aspect of it, we kind of have to. Because otherwise, how are we going to properly set safety distances? And we're not talking about runaways and fires, we're just talking about falling, okay? But it also affects the pollution and all these other variables. So if we had a cap on the height of the towers, it's much easier to figure out our distances.
It would be.
Without a
The-
variable, I understand the very thing, I get it. But if you got your minimums, let's say just for example, because I keep helping on 2,000 feet, I don't care if it's 1,000 feet, whatever. Let's say you have your 2,000 feet minimum distance from your border for any tower. Minimum. I don't care if you're building 100 foot. I don't care if you're building 600 foot. Okay. If you have that established, then they can figure out what they want in there in between that. Okay. Because it's not, we're talking about just the falling distance, just the safety distance right now. But there's all the other things that we haven't figured into it that I don't know how to do or if we can at this point, like the lightning. Like I said, the manufacturer, not only do they have this safety distance underneath, they've got, if it's lightning, you got to be 3/4 of a mile away at a 500-foot tower in a vehicle. It's endless with what we could do. I'm just looking for a starting point.
Right.
And how do you know, when they built the towers in Joyce, they were 200 foot tall, now they're 600 foot tall. Where does it end? You know, do we want to see towers 3 counties away?
Yeah, it's, or you're better off to have great big towers that are 1,000 feet tall, that you stick them where people don't live and, you
But that's the
know,
problem in
I
this
don't.
county, we live everywhere. It's,
Well, yeah,
they can do that out in the desert. That's why they're putting wind energy out on the ocean.
Right.
We don't have that option here.
it,
And strictly from a safety standpoint, to try to get a baseline for our distance, that's why I think we need to consider a cap on the height of the windmills. For fire, because then it affects, like I said, affects all the other things, the noise pollution, the flicker. Okay, because your 100-foot tower and your 1,000-foot tower are very different for the flicker. Just so many things just get multiplied with height.
well, it is and it is.
I don't know the answer, I'm just talking.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep, it is, and I'm gonna say it is and it isn't because, you know, yeah, your flicker only goes so far. Doesn't matter how tall the tower is, but I don't, the thing that concerns me about this, and I agree with you, I like what you're saying, but how do you easily regulate it? That's what gets me is if we get too much in here, you know, then it just brings up, you know, like he was talking exclusionary,
Mhm.
that, you know, because.
But our job
Well,
is
but I
from a
think
safety
Yeah, it
standpoint.
is.
Well,
From a safety
if we have,
standpoint, I can say, you know what, if you want to build a straw house on your property, that's fine, but I don't want you to build a straw house next to mine, let alone a straw house that's 500 foot tall, because it's not safe next to my property.
yeah.
Well,
And I
that's-
think the other thing is if we need to have rationale behind why we think it should be no higher than this or no
Right.
shorter than this or what
Yeah, that's
have you.
where I'm getting.
Right, and I've struggled to find, outside of the safety issue that you bring up, rationale for restricting the total height. Because as it gets taller, presumably, one of the reasons why it's getting taller is because they're generating more electricity from that one turbine. Which is frankly one of the reasons why Kossuth took the approach they took by not limiting the height or the quantity, but limiting the total nameplate output. So if it's rated to put out X amount, Well, you're already at that limit. So the only way that you can add more turbines is if you take out turbines.
Right, and I suppose part of that equation is because the more power they're putting out, the louder they are. And there's a relative to the noise, to how much power it's putting out, maybe how the blades cut. I don't know. I don't know. all the
Yeah,
answers to
there's
that,
all of
but-
those factors
there's a lot of-
go in, yeah.
But
Yeah.
But you know,
I don't want
and
to tell
I've
somebody
thought
how much
about-
power they can make,
You know, I've thought
because to
about
me, it's
the,
not my business, but what is my business is noise pollution, safety, and what I got to look at,
Mm,
you know?
Yeah.
I don't care how much power you put out, knock yourself out. But I understand that's
Yeah.
a tool that they used to restrict things.
yeah. And there are some counties that do have a maximum height.
Mhm.
600 feet comes to mind. I'd have to look at my files to see which county it
Yeah,
was.
there is a county that's 600. I did
Yeah.
read.
So I mean, we could recommend just, you know, a maximum height of 600 feet. Just because another county did. I don't know what drove that height, you know, that limit.
Because they're gonna go next year, they'll be 700, and then the next year they'll be 800.
Yeah,
Well, it's, yeah, and I don't, to me, I think what drives it more than anything else is a setback distance that's based off of height.
yes,
That the setback distance gets larger the taller you go. And that in alone in Worth County will stop you from building too tall. Because of, yeah.
Just the geography, you run out of
We're a
space.
populated county.
right.
And that's one of the things is today, you know, as you go taller, which my understanding is they're talking what, I think 600 feet, aren't they on the?
I thought the
worthwhile
ones that were out there were 600, and they're talking taller yet.
Yeah, well, I don't know, but to me, 3.5, use your limit where you can put those things, because even
Without
if,
consent, right?
without consent, but the thing is, a bigger turbine is going to produce more electricity in a low wind and be quieter. So there's
Maybe.
that, you know,
See, there's that problem too, though. When phase came in,
yeah,
all of a sudden these towers were so much bigger and so much better, and they were the answer.
well.
And they weren't, because just because it was bigger and so better on a calculator, it wasn't, because all the blades turned to crap. They sounded literally like helicopters.
Oh,
They didn't
yeah.
sound like little whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. They sounded like helicopters. They had to come in immediately and change many of the blades. Guess what? Then they all had flattened bearings, because it was in my opinion, substandard manufacturer that Invenergy uses.
Well, that's,
And all the bearings is flat, and they come in and change all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Bigger isn't always better,
no,
you
but
know? And, you know, if you're gonna take off with a Cessna or a 747, you still got that energy. I'm talking about size ratios, and it equates into loud, visual, everything.
true,
I mean, and
but you achieve by your setback distance.
right.
The
but
bigger
we're
and taller you
gonna run out
go,
of
the
that.
further away you gotta
If you
be.
had 4 sections with no houses on it,
Yep.
you could put a 2,000-foot windmill in the middle of it, maybe, right? But now you're gonna see it over the Joyce Hill from your house. And I don't know that that's the right answer either. And I realize as a safety thing, I can't say what we can or can't have for height, or excuse me, for visual, I can't say what we can and can't have for height, because my opinion is different than yours. But when it comes to safety, that's what this committee is about. And a taller tower is more fire prone, bigger, there's just, everything compounds the bigger the blade gets, the bigger the tower gets. The problems that we have regulating safety, or all the other things that go with
I
size,
thought I had
get
some
worse.
sizes in here.
I mean, does that, am I saying that to where you understand that?
Yeah, no, I get you.
That's why I don't want to regulate how big of a shed you can build, but if you build a huge shed, it doesn't bother me. But if you build a huge tower, it does.
Yeah,
You know.
and there again, you know,
And I'm not
You put
against the
the serious-
windmills. I'm just saying that
you put the Sears Tower in Northwood, is that a good thing or a bad thing? I don't, I hate to limit property owners' ability without a good
Absolutely.
reason of why. And a setback distance makes sense because you're limiting their ability to infringe on somebody else's right. Like that grows as the thing grows.
Has to.
It has to. That's the thing I don't like.
But that's where I'm still saying we got to come up with a minimum, safety minimum,
Yeah,
and then you grow it with the height.
Yeah, so I'll take that for action to get some of those safety distances from manufacturers. So we'll come back and circle back around on,
okay.
on the minimum distance, and we'll pick up the discussion. And we got Justin here as well, talking about maximum height or rely on the setback. Because I think, to really move those combined discussions along, we've got to have those safety distances. We got to know what those are first.
And if we can't get those safety distances, there's somebody like that, Devin or Kevin,
Yeah.
that can assist us.
Yep, yeah, we'll get them. So we'll find out what that is, and then we'll revisit the conversation, because that plays into the max height and the expanding zone and so on.
Right.
So,
I thought.
and I made the note too on, it seemed to be a consensus, although I didn't hear Dana render an opinion on, should whatever setback that we have, should it be a setback at the residence, or should it be a setback to property lines?
My opinion, property lines,
Okay,
plain and simple.
okay. What else?
No, I think we're in agreement of that.
Yeah, no, I mean, what else in
Yeah.
this thing? We'll come back to the distance.
Well, one of the setbacks, public conservation area at 2 miles. A lot of what I was reading, it's been 1 mile. Not saying 2 is bad.
Yeah,
I just had a question mark on that.
the 2 mile came from DNR for
Right.
wildlife areas.
Okay.
What the state, he wanted to go by the state recommendations, and the state recommendations, like for Silver Lake Park, Worth County Lake, Jehola, 2 miles. Wildlife areas, I think it said 1.5 miles, but Jimmy didn't care if it was down to 1 mile. I don't either, if you guys don't. The Eagles were 5 miles.
Yeah, and I took that down to 3, because 5 miles,
It's ridiculous.
it just takes out the
But
county.
for point of reference, Jimmy didn't care if there was any, because most of the eagles are already in the protected areas under 1 mile. There's eagles nesting everywhere in the county. They're not an endangered species anymore. It's just, at one time they were, and it's a national symbol. I don't care if it's at 0, as long as we've got our sand crane area put into it, and that mile buffer for all the wildlife areas, and the 2 miles for the parks. I'm more worried about
Well,
taxpayers.
parks would be like a public recreation area. We've got a 1/2 mile right now. The public conservation area, which is 2 miles, public conservation area is land owned by county, state, or federal agencies and managed for conservation preservation purposes, including, not limited to, wildlife management areas, conservation areas, wildlife refuges.
See, that was the stuff that-
Waterfowl refuges.
That was the stuff that we talked about, 1 mile, probably fine.
Well, that's why I had put my question at the 2. Do we need 2, or is 1 good enough there?
1 is plenty good for the wildlife areas, the
Right.
wildlife habitats. It's the 2 miles that I think the state has a recommendation for, and Jimmy thought was fine, and I personally want 2 miles from our
Well, but
actual
that's,
county camp.
yes. So the
Silver
public
Lake.
conservation area, I took that, down, have all these things, you know, this is waterfowl refuge. This is wildlife management, this is this, and this is this, and says, those kinds of things are the reason it's 2 miles is because it's a wildlife area.
Right.
It's a public
Well,
conservation
I don't
area.
care.
But if you go 2 miles from any, I mean,
Most of Grove Township are,
that's what I'm just sitting there. I mean, you take like Steins Woods. Do you need to be 2 miles away from Steins
my opinion
Woods?
is no, and that was also, I know Jimmy's not here, but I spoke, he don't, miles plenty.
Yeah, I'm just, you know, we have a lot of these 40 acres, little chunk,
Mhm.
you know, that is really a wildlife habitat. People
Mhm.
really aren't there. You know, that's getting whacked at 2 miles too.
I think a
And you start
mile's
drawing all
plenty.
those, boy, that gets
Miles.
pretty restrictive.
Miles plenty, yeah, it is.
So, okay, well, I think we all are good with the mile. Okay, because that was the one I'd kind of just looked at and said, yeah.
But that's where I thought the regular wildlife area was different than Worth County Lake, Ochihola Park and Silver Lake.
Not in.
That I would rather have at 2 miles, but I'm not gonna break my heart if it's only a mile.
Well, and that's, you know, one of the things is if you can put a windmill 1,500 feet away from my house,
That's why I don't think the Eagles,
the homeowner, as I am to a public area where they choose to go there or not go there for the day, you know.
but that's the problem, because somebody else has stepped in and said 1,000 or 1,500 feet. That's what's imprinted in our mind.
No.
And I'd say, well, if I had it my way, everybody'd have a mile, but you know, well, it wouldn't work.
Yeah,
Okay, I mean, just being honest.
well,
The
and we
bird
heard,
gets a mile, but I don't.
well, and I think 2 of the 3 supervisors clearly said that they are not against wind energy. They just want to have protection.
They just want to have rules.
Right.
Yep.
Okay, and if you go a mile from anybody's house, there will be no more turbines.
Right.
Unless you're consenting.
And let's face it, the supervisors are worried about one thing, tax dollars, that they do generate tax dollars. Okay. You know, and any industry in this, you know, we got to support our infrastructure. So, you know, limiting them, that's part of the concern of, you know, can you make this so restrictive that you can't put up any
Right.
towers?
And that
I'm against.
then you are getting into
Now we're
Exclusionary,
language.
yeah.
But now we're talking about money again, and that's not our job.
Right.
No,
No,
you know,
I think it's more a matter of that, to me, if we said it's a mile, we're just following Madison County. We're writing an exclusionary ordinance.
right. So that's where I get back to it, you know, and let's face it, there are some damn good places to put a windmill.
Sure.
You know, it's like, I can't figure out, why do you want to put a solar farm on $10,000 an acre land when there's basically free land in Nevada that can't raise a grass for, you know, it's 150 acres for a cow.
Because your place is in Iowa, not Nevada. That's the
Right.
answer.
What else you got, David?
I had a question mark. Why is the cemetery 1,200?
That's what they had.
Okay,
Is that was what a bunch of other counties had?
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
Kossuth had.
I'm not, there again, the residents probably aren't. Turbine. I get it, but.
Before we leave
I-
those,
Well, the only Well, the only other question maybe I had on setback, and if we're starting at 1,500, I mean, I understand all your safety questions, but to me, you want to know why the energy company is
And I asked,
taking 500 feet off their setback.
I tried asking him that when he was our guest speaker and he had no answer. I asked him if he had formulas.
yeah, his
Why?
pat answer is, I didn't run that project. I don't know. I can't
Yeah.
tell you.
Well, and I think we're gonna come back and revisit
Yes.
what is the appropriate setback
yeah.
distance when we get some more information.
But
But
I
I
just
agree
didn't
with
want to
you.
lose that little
Yeah,
tidbit
that-
in
I-
there.
So when they come
I'm
out
right
with their
there with you.
design, it'll be at 1,000 feet.
Well, you see, that,
I mean,
that's what gets me, yeah.
Okay.
is there a concern of distances from Shell Rock River, Elk Creek Marsh? Elk Creek Marsh will be covered in a wildlife area.
Yes.
But I'm talking about Elk Creek.
Yes.
Yeah,
So what I
public
did,
drainage.
I add, well, not from a public drainage perspective, but I added a definition for, let me find it.
Like natural body of water or,
Yeah, something about body of water. What did I call it?
okay, significant bodies of water. that do
Significant
not
bodies of water. that's
Fall
what I
under
called it.
public recreation area or public conservation definitions, half a mile, he said.
Right.
And then, of course, there's.
Yep.
What is a significant body of water? So
Well, that's
nothing-
why,
Any
that's why I tried to
natural-
create the
Any
definition.
natural
Yeah.
occurring body of water.
Right,
Creek.
along with named rivers and streams and creeks that are not solely designed as field drainage, because we have drainage
Yeah.
as a separate one.
Correct.
So a named river, stream, or creek, so Elk Creek would be a significant body of water.
So did you decide who's gonna change the Eagles down?
And that
to-
has,
We're not deciding a lot of this right now.
No.
Okay.
well,
No,
we're,
Feed for them.
we're just
yeah, we're,
penciling some different stuff.
yep.
Why a half mile on that significant body of water? I mean, on some of this stuff, I wonder,
It was-
shouldn't it be the setback distance?
That's
It
my
was-
question. Yeah, I don't know.
I mean,
It
if
was
you're-
trying,
as
to
long-
be consistent with the public recreation area and the
Okay.
grass, the woodland or grassland
okay. And that's basically, those came from Cassuth?
from DNR, well, Cassuth/DNR.
Okay.
So that's okay, here again. Okay, I care more about my house than along the creek. I want it protected along the creek. I just don't know it has to be a half mile.
Well, that's,
Like you just said, or whatever.
I'm just wondering
if
if, should those actually be like public recreation area, significant body and woodland, should that be the same setback that we are for a property line?
It's very possible.
Food for thought
Yeah.
is kind of, that's what I think that's what we're coming out.
I don't
with.
mind taking these distances down in trade for getting personal property lines up a little farther.
Well, and that's, and I,
Just being honest.
yeah, and you need to protect, why does a river get more protection than your house?
Mhm.
That's really what you're saying, right?
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, why does the eagle get more protection? Why does the eagle's house get more protection than your house?
Yeah, kind of. I mean,
And
There's a hell of a lot less Rothos in the world than there are eagles.
Well, I got you
I'm
more.
an endangered
There's
bird.
there's a lot more Rothos than Quizlets, I can tell you that. But, it. Just
Yeah.
I just got, okay, I know they count dead birds in these project areas.
Some,
No, they have done some,
yeah.
you know, that's part of the study. Have eagles been regularly hit by windmills? I mean, there's a lot of them up. I just.
Yeah. I don't know.
There is official claims or documents of raptors and eagles and whatever getting killed, maybe not in
I don't know
Iowa,
what
but
the
Yeah, I just didn't know. I mean,
the
are
numbers
they,
are now.
you know, a sparrow's dumb and flies into it and the eagle's smarter? I was just wondering if.
here's Jimmy's comment. Vehicles are hell of a lot harder on our wildlife around here than.
I thought our wildlife was a hell of a lot harder on my vehicle.
Yeah, we're at 9 o'clock.
Okay.
I've made the notes that we want to get the information on the safety setback, get that distance. And then
Yeah.
we'll revisit the setback. I've made the note that the property lines should be the setback, not the houses. I've made the note to change the public conservation area from 2 miles down to 1 mile. And I've made a note, public recreation area, woodland or grassland, significant bodies of water, cemetery, should those all just fall into property line setbacks?
As long as
And
they
again,
come out at.
All of that goes right back to the very first thing that I talked about just a moment ago, that we need to get those safety distances and understand what that is. Then we can come back and revisit those things.
Yeah.
We'll also revisit the conversation on maximum height. You know, do we need to have a maximum height, or is a multiplier with the setback gonna automatically self-regulate that height? And I made the note on the definitions that you had pointed out. So next week we'll pick up, I'll try to get that information out there before next week. So we can
Reprint.
rear and just keep going through. So if you still have some reading on the ordinance, make your notes on what things that you think we need to talk about that you think isn't right. And we'll pick that up
And,
next week.
you know, some of the stuff yeah.
Meeting here again.
Yes, yep.
Are they charging us for this? then,
No.
Or they just, because, okay. Because I was gonna say, they were charging us that we could go to another option, but.
So anybody have any issues with that plan for next week? Okay, if not, I will take a motion to adjourn if anybody wants to leave.
So moved.
Then,
All in favor?
aye.
Opposed? Motion is passed. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
We'll get-
I'll get out of these zoning meetings.
Okay,
I don't want to take up any of your time. It's already been long dead. So just once they have for us.
sure. Appreciate it. Thanks.